Hey guys, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, the new home of power mining analysis. In today's episode, Anthony Power and I are going to be joined by the CEO of Riot Platforms, Jason Les, who's going to be providing us a behind-the-scenes look at their world-class Corsicana Bitcoin mining facility. In addition to that, we're going to be getting an update on the Bitfarm situation and on their Investor Day presentation that took place last week. Now, before we get into all that, you guys know the deal. Smash the like button. If you're not already subscribed, feel free to join. And let us know in the comment section below if there's anything from Jason or the team at Riot that you'd like addressed that we weren't able to cover in today's presentation. Now, with that being said, let's get into today's video.
All right, well, we're out here at Corsicana holding our first Investor Day. My name is Phil McPherson. I'm Vice President of Capital Markets and Investor Relations. And today we have about 25 people out here, and we're here showing them the world's largest Bitcoin mining facility located an hour south of Dallas, Texas, in Corsicana, Texas.
Okay guys, so that's right. Today's guest, we've got Jason Les, hot off the heels of our Corsicana facility tour and Investor Day that took place last week. We want to give you guys a behind the scene looks at this world-class, largest Bitcoin mining facility to date in the world, and some of the questions that were brought up from investors at this exclusive event. So Jason, thanks so much for taking the time here today. Really looking forward to this one.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad you guys could come out and see Corsicana in person. We've obviously been talking about this and working on this for so long. There's been a lot of work going into it. So to finally be able to show the results of everything we've been talking about was really rewarding and exciting for us at Riot.
Thank you.
Yeah, Anthony and I sure had a good time there, and you really, a picture says 1,000 words. So we're going to integrate a lot of pictures into the video and let you guys see exactly what we saw firsthand, because it truly is impressive. Anthony, how did you feel about the trip, and what would you describe the overall feeling of Corsicana as?
As soon as the coach sort of got towards the site, it was just sort of like mind blowing. The sheer size of it, you can't get that from a photograph. You have to physically be there, and the photograph doesn't do it justice, because you have to, to walk around that site would have took for all day long. It's, we had to go in vehicles to get around the site, but it's just amazing. And you think, like, well, people say, well, yeah, but they've been doing this for nearly 2 years now. The amount of work that's gone in there, 75,000 trucks of waste materials or wasteland taken away. It's just, the sheer size. And having met the guy that did those 75,000 trips, it was an eye opener.
Yeah, it certainly was, to say the least. So Jason, we've got some questions, a mixture from subscribers and ones that came up from investors at the site there. So we wanted to go through those with you and show some of this footage in the process. So first things first, one of the big themes here was just the importance of energy infrastructure, access to megawatts, PPA agreements. What makes Corsicana so special in your mind, and specifically in today's operating environment?
Yeah, Corsicana is really special and valuable because of that 1 gigawatt interconnect there. 3 years ago, maybe the theme in Bitcoin mining was ASICs were the bottleneck. There were supply chain constraints. No one could get enough ASICs. I think thanks to competition in the industry, that has largely changed. The big constraint that Bitcoin mining, normal data centers, HPC AI data centers, the constraint that everyone's dealing with now is access to power. So the fact that we were able to secure a 1 gigawatt interconnect and be able to build this campus, this launch pad for which all this hash rate can be built upon, was incredibly valuable. And I think we saw this coming years in advance. This is why we laid the foundation to do this years ago. We started this project in April of 2022. It was a horrible market back then. There was crisis after crisis hitting the broader industry. Bitcoin was crashing down, but we knew that we needed this access to power in the future. So we broke ground back then, and 18 months after breaking ground, here we are today.
That's awesome, Jason. I mean, we got to see a number of the buildings in their format at the moment. So from that perspective, can you sort of like, give us some of the individual building specifications in terms of the megawatts for those buildings, the hash rate that will go into those buildings? Some are already sort of like, up and running, and the sort of the timings as well that associated with those for this first phase.
Yeah, so each building is built with 100 megawatts capacity, meaning each building is attached to its own 100 megawatt transformer. And you don't use a full 100 megawatts. That would not be safe to do, but we build out to the safe limit there with our with hash rate and to a much lesser extent, of course, the immersion equipment and the lights and the networking and other ancillary equipment. So every building has a nameplate capacity of 100 megawatts, and then we're filling that with as much hash rate as is reasonably safe. So the first building, and remember, there's a mix of minor models that are going in here. We had purchase orders that we initiated last year for M56S++, M56S Plus miners that as time went on, we upgraded and we got more orders of M66, M60S, etc. So there's different efficiencies in machines. So the first building, building A1, we're expecting that to be approximately 3.5 exahash. And then as each building goes on, there's more efficient equipment being used there. And then by the fourth building, we're looking at around 4.5 exahash. And that's for the first 4 buildings in the first phase. Of course, equipment is improving all the time as we build future buildings after that. When those plans begin to be executed on, assuming equipment efficiency is improved, we'll be able to get more and more hash rate out of those. And then you asked on timeline. So yeah, this entire first phase is going to be completed by the end of this year. We have a really big push this month. If you look at our investor deck, we have quarterly hash rate targets here. For Q1, it's about 21.4 exahash. So there's a lot of buildings being worked on simultaneously to reach that goal. We're completing building A1. There's miners going to be deployed in building A2, potentially getting some miners being deployed in building B1. Over at Rockdale, there's excess capacity being deployed. There's miners being replaced. There's 5 different buildings being worked on at once here from hands all over the company, advancing our hash rate to reach these goals. That's kind of the big hump that we're focused around. After that, we have a Q3 target of approximately, I think it's 26.5 exahash, and then our year-end target Q4 getting to 31.5 exahash.
Now, Jason, they say seeing is believing. And for Anthony and I, this was our first time at a facility of this scale that also focused on immersion. So Corsicana, not only is it the largest, but it's 100% immersion cooled. Why did you guys decide to go with immersion technology? What are the benefits here? And then I've got a couple follow-up questions for you after part 1 there.
Yeah, so there's 2 major things that we're trying to accomplish. 1, we're trying to maximize operating uptime. And then 2, we're trying to maximize the useful operational life of our machine. So I'll talk about the first one first. So Texas is a very hot environment. We get temperatures as high as over 110 degrees Fahrenheit, though. That's very challenging to do. So to maximize our operating uptime across all of these temperatures, we have found immersion, especially the improved design that we're using here at Corsicana, to be an ideal solution for maximizing uptime. This is also really important relating to our power strategy. And I like to remind people about that. One of the programs that we participate in to drive that industry-leading low cost of power is something called ancillary services. Some people might know of programs such as controllable load response is another common term people use. And in these programs, you are selling your grid operator, in our case, ERCOT, the right to control our load. Now, many people intuitively may believe, well, that just means they want you off. But that's not the case. The grid operator is trying to always match supply and demand. So by default in these programs, you need to be on. And if you have sold them the right to control your load, it is a huge penalty if you do not continue operating. So we need immersion to make sure that we can continuously operate in all those hours. We can't just decide, oh, it's a hot day, or maybe we'll see how good the airflow works today, see how windy it is. That you cannot rely on that. So by ensuring that we can have more stable operating uptime even during these extreme temperatures. We can participate in these programs for all that they're worth, and this helps Riot lower our cost for power, which is one of the pillars of our strategy and always really important to us. The second major bucket is extending the useful operating life of these machines. Riot has demonstrated how good we are at achieving a low cost of power through our power strategy. So what that means is even less efficient equipment, as it becomes more dated, we can continue to make profitable. We continue to be profitable in these environments. So we're making a big investment in hash rate. That's one of the, if probably the biggest investment that miners make on the CapEx side. We want these machines to have the longest useful life possible. We may be depreciating them over 3 years on our financials, but we're looking to operate them much longer than that. So by keeping the machines operating in these cool, stable, consistent environments, not exposed to dust and other particulates in the air that could damage equipment over time, we are helping ensure these machines last a long time and need as few repairs as possible over their lifespan.
Gotcha. And I can definitely vouch for the temperature there, you guys. Coming from Canada, it was very hot in Texas, in Corsicana. Now, we had a question.
And by the way, Bryce, it gets a lot hotter than that. That was not that bad of a day.
Hey, you know what? I'm happy to come back any January or February from here on out. Now, we had a question actually at the event. One of the analysts was counting the number of rigs in each immersion tank. Sebastian also had a question about this as well. So I was wondering, Jason, if you could give us a little bit of insight into the configuration, why the tanks are a little bit larger than needed. I know you and I discussed this. And you explained to me how each rig doesn't necessarily pull the same amount of watts. So there's a discrepancy sometimes in the number of rigs in a tank. Can you just speak to that a little bit for people who aren't super familiar with the immersion process?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're talking about in our first two buildings, we're using one type of immersion infrastructure, and the next two buildings, B1, B2, we're using another type. So the details on that, I think we'll save for a future conversation. But for the first two buildings that we were looking at, each of those buildings has approximately 640 immersion tanks. And I saw you had the teaser video on Twitter. People can see it's a massive building, one tank after the next. I think someone said it reminded them of that scene in The Matrix where it's all the humans plugged in. You know, that's kind of what it's like. Each of those tanks, they have a slightly different number of miners depending on the exact amount of miners. It's about 23 to 26 miners per tank. And the reason for this is, you know, one circuit can only have so much power being pulled. And when you're getting miners from your manufacturer, even if they might be the same model, for example, they're all the M56S++, their hash rates will vary a little bit, you know, just based on that silicon lottery that you're getting the result of. So we have slightly different number of miners per each individual tank in order to maximize using the most amount of power out of them and getting the most amount of hash rate we can with those machines.
Perfect. And another question from one of the subscribers, Jason, in air-cooled facilities, and we saw this in Core Scientific, they're able to stack the miners quite high actually on top of each other. In immersion, it's one layer in the tank. What is the reason for that? Is there an opportunity to stack in there, or why have you elected to have 23 rigs per tank specifically?
In our experience, stacking tanks is not ideal because of the safety concerns that introduce. You know, remember, these miners are 40 pounds each. They're kind of heavy. So you have to think about the individual worker who's going to be, you know, not a ladder would certainly not be safe, but, you know, going up on a scissor lift or something like that, having to pull miners in and out. And then you have, you know, fluid that's up top, and there's always some risk that something could come out and then go down. Altogether, it's just not the optimal way to build those. When you think about it, it's power is our main constraint. Land is not ultimately the main constraint there. We have 270 acres there. So when we built these buildings, we weren't thinking about how to be as efficient as possible with space with square footage, that doesn't really get us anything in immersion. We're thinking about how to have the most efficient and safest operations. So for that reason, where they're just single high tanks across that whole building. So air, it's just two separate approaches. In air, not as big of a concern. There are great engineered facilities out there where miners go up quite high. But for immersion, in our view, it's just not the safest way to operate, stacking tanks on top of each other.
So you've got the Rockdale facility at 700 megawatts maximum capacity there, and the flagship site now at Corsicana will get you another gigawatt. In terms of seeing anything like the level of these sites being built in the future, what are the sort of the barriers to entry for other miners contemplating trying to get access to sites of this size?
Well, the first barrier to entry is going to be just finding somewhere where excess volume of power exists. Finding that in a time where data centers, HPC AI data centers, normal industry, everyone needs power. Yeah, I think a common talking point we're starting to see through 2024 here is there is not enough power to meet forecasted demand based on all the new needs for energy. Well, there is a lot of generation coming alongside that as well, and it's a separate topic, but we look at Bitcoin mining as the tool to bring more energy capacity and generation forward. But without finding that excess power capacity, you're done at the starting point. You can't go any farther than there. So you'll first need to find this excess capacity, this interconnect available, and then in ERCOT, you're going to need to get approval from the Large Flexible Load Task Force for that interconnect. And then from there, you're going to need to get a facilities extension agreement, et cetera. Riot, we have that 1 gigawatt approved by the ERCOT Large Flexible Load Task Force. We were one of the first to get that approval, actually, when that new committee started a couple years ago. So the barrier to entry for someone wanting to build a 1 gigawatt site is going to be finding an extra 1 gigawatt somewhere and then getting that approved by the grid operator. Our view is that is going to be very difficult to find. We're very proud that this is going to be the first, as far as we're aware, 1 gigawatt Bitcoin mining facility when it's all said and done. There may not be another 1 gigawatt facility in Bitcoin mining again. We'll have to see.
Now, Jason, one of the big observations both Anthony and I made was just the amount of infrastructure, specifically power-related infrastructure that was required at this site. And I know you mentioned long lead times on a lot of that equipment for substations, things like that, but all the way down to even smaller pieces of electrical equipment. So I wanted to ask you, what are the benefits of scaling at a single site as opposed to smaller sites? And how does that really play into your hand in terms of having all this energy infrastructure already sourced, already delivered, and waiting to be used?
Yeah, that's a great point on the supply chain, and actually ties to Anthony's previous questions about the constraints you deal with here as well. After you even had all those approvals, the next thing you'll need is the energy equipment to build out there. If you're talking especially about the high voltage equipment, that is an 18 to 24 month lead time. So anyone starting from scratch, even after getting those first two steps we just talked about, there are major supply chain constraints around this equipment. There's only very few producers. And then once again, this equipment is hotly desired and high in demand right now. So because we ordered that equipment 2 years ago, over 2 years ago now, we were able to deploy that. So getting that equipment and then doing the earthwork on the site to build out this campus that's ready for each building to be constructed on top of it, that was the long lead item. I think what you're seeing now out there is these buildings rapidly coming after each other now that that base has been laid. So that land, building that out, and then the electrical equipment is always going to be the long lead item before you're ready to start getting those buildings up and running. So we're building at a huge scale that gives us a lot of power in the marketplace, that allows us to have good relationships with our suppliers. Also, Riot in 2021 acquired a company called ESS Metron, which is an electrical engineering and manufacturing company. We didn't acquire that business because we just happened to be interested in getting into that business, but we acquired it to give us more visibility and control over our supply chain. They have saved us considerable amount on our CapEx expense for the electrical equipment that they specifically provide. And they give us a lot more visibility and control over the supply chain. And I think anyone building a large facility or a facility of any size, is dealing with these challenges all the time. So acquiring ESS Metron, a key part of the vertically integrated strategy that Riot always talks about. Now, to your question about the efficiencies of doing this all at one site. You have all these teams that are specializing in different things. And when you're building at one location, one building after another, the teams are simply moving from one project to the next, and then the team that follows them comes behind. There's the team that erects the building. There's the team that lays the concrete. There's the team that's doing the electrical. There's the team that's doing the immersion tanks. And they are going one after another as we go building by building, and in some cases, parallel work here to maximize speed. And that process is going to continue until the first 4 buildings, the first 400 megawatts, is entirely complete there at that facility. And then when we do the second phase, that entire exercise will repeat itself.
So you've articulated many times recently about the Riot's decision to stay within Bitcoin mining and not venture into the HPC space. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you're going to, or what your strategy is to become the world's largest pure Bitcoin miner?
Sure. So I always tell people Riot is a Bitcoin company. We're here because of Bitcoin. We're here because of the massive opportunity we see with the adoption of Bitcoin as an investment class. I think what we're seeing this year with the approval and the massive inflows into these ETFs is a great data point to where this industry is moving. In fact, we have presidential candidates now saying that they support Bitcoin and they want the United States to be the leader in Bitcoin. We want to be positioned around this. We believe that the access to power that we have is a valuable commodity, and we want to use as much of that towards Bitcoin mining as we possibly can. And the reason for that is Riot has demonstrated through its power strategy a very low cost per Bitcoin on an energy basis. And what we've done here is built up this company. We've built up this pipeline, the infrastructure, both human resources and the physical resources that we have to replicate that advantage, that energy cost per Bitcoin, over the widest possible scale. So putting the proven results of our power strategy to work and using all the electrical capacity that we can get towards mining Bitcoin, effectively buying Bitcoin at a discount to the market price. And by being an efficient operator like that, we think we are going to have the ideal financial returns that we're looking for over the long term. I understand there's a lot of interest around HPC and AI right now, and there are companies in our space that have struck very interesting and admirable deals. Thinking specifically, everyone's talking about Core Scientific. I think what they've done is very interesting and admirable. That is their strategy. We are narrowing in on this Bitcoin focus. We think this is a business that we want to specialize in.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, we talked a lot about that actually at both of these presentations. So it'll be interesting to have the cores video out tomorrow and kind of compare and contrast. But the pure Bitcoin definitely has some merit, Jason. And I think a lot of the enthusiasts from this channel really appreciate that clear, focused approach on the Bitcoin mining. Now, 2 things that really caught my surprise at this facility that I was not expecting. First and foremost was the water strategy, the drainage. Even the amount of rain we saw during the trip, and the solution for that, I guess, as your water holding pool. I joked on a podcast we were on that you could probably water ski in the thing. It's so big. So I wanted to get your comments on that. The other one that Anthony and I thought was really interesting was for your network infrastructure, referred to as the bunker, actually built underground for a number of reasons. So can you give us just a quick couple minutes on each one of those?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're using immersion cooling, there's water that if you're using water over your dry coolers, you are going to be able to keep your oil operating at those cooler temperatures that you're targeting, even at higher ambient temperatures. So we don't need water all the time to use immersion cooling. Compare that to normal data centers actually use a lot more water than Bitcoin mining. When we're doing immersion cooling, we only need water at these hotter days of the year, hotter months of the year. So what we did was we designed this retention pond to hold a lot of water in order to have a reservoir to accomplish that. And the entire site was designed, as you referenced, Bryce, to collect every drop of rainwater that ever comes down. We get a good amount of rain there in Texas, and that feeds that into that retention pond, and then that water can later be treated, and then we can use that back in the buildings, rather on the dry coolers as part of the immersion cooling infrastructure. So we're trying to be very, very efficient on water. We're not entirely reliant on bringing in municipal or outside water in any way. We are trying to collect water and create a pond here and be as efficient as possible. There'll be some external sources of water that are brought in there as well, and that will serve as that Lake Riot, if you will, to hold that water for those hotter days. But those are really only on, especially in the summer months. I think as we get into outside of the summer, October, November, the ambient temperature is cool enough where water is not even required in order to maintain the target temperatures that we need. And then you asked a question about the network operations center. So that is underground. That's because there is some crazy weather sometimes there in Texas, whether it be hail, rain, wind, potentially tornadoes. We want an area where we can continue operating the site and have control over the infrastructure and not put our people at risk if that's going on. So our network operations center has an underground component. People can be safe underground and continue to operate the site if they need to make sure they're positioned out of any potential harm's way.
Yeah, incredible.
That's awesome. I'm going to take it a towel and shorts for the next trip would be advisable, would it, to have a little dip in the pool there?
That's a good idea. When it'll be all filled up by then, probably.
Couple of questions left. I think would be sort of like a miss if we sort of like didn't have a quick comment on the fact that I think towards the end of last week, Thursday or Friday, you increased your stake further in Bitfarms, and really sort of like what does Bitfarms bring to Riot Platforms, in terms of if you're successful with your strategy.
Yeah. So one of the themes that we've been talking about here today is how valuable access to power capacity is. And while Riot is an industry leader in access to the capacity, both through Rockdale and Corsicana, our mission doesn't end there. So Bitfarms has a very impressive operations team. They have an impressive portfolio of sites there, and they're operating in jurisdictions and environments that Riot is not. Riot operates entirely in the United States, well, specifically Texas, while Bitfarms is majority outside of the United States and Canada, Paraguay, Argentina, now some small US operations as well. That is, to us, a very interesting add-on to Riot. We have the ability to essentially add an international expansion arm using that proven management team to continue doing what they're doing, but under a broader corporate corporate umbrella with the support and resources to make them the best at what they do. So Riot announced that we've increased our stake to 14%. And at this stage, we're focused on making the corporate governance changes that we believe are necessary to unlock value for shareholders. And if they're stated going through a strategic process, we think these corporate governance changes are necessary in order to have a fair and properly considered process.
Makes sense. Now, the final question for you, I know we've focused a lot, obviously, on your flagship Corsicana facility in today's discussion, but we wanted to get a quick update on Rockdale as well, because this is a very valuable portion of your portfolio. So can we maybe finish off with that one, Jason, and just give us a state of the nation at Rockdale as well?
Yeah, the work is fast and furious at Rockdale as well. Unfortunately, we couldn't do two sites in one day there, but at Rockdale, we are both deploying new miners there. We are replacing problematic miners, and we're working on a host of other operational things to improve efficiency out there. So a lot of that work is going on right now this month. And over the next 2 weeks, I think we're going to start to see some good results there. And that'll continue through July as far as the minor deployments and redeployments are concerned. And then we're always working to improve our operating efficiency. There's always different things that we can do. And that work is always going to continue. But just as the efforts are fast and furious out at Corsicana, the efforts are fast and furious at Rockdale as well. It is truly a corporate-wide sprint right now to reach these hash rate goals and improve our operating efficiency. That is the #1 focus that we have.
Yeah, simply
That's
incredible, you guys. Jason, we want to thank you and the team so much for your hospitality, for the experience, the tour, all the information, the photos, the videos that you were able to provide. Really a once-in-a-lifetime experience for Anthony and myself. So on behalf of all of us and the viewers here, thank you for giving us this backstage access. We'll throw it back to you for any closing thoughts, but you guys leave a comment in the section below, smash the like button. This is really something to be seen. And if you're not familiar with Riot and their operations growth plan, I would highly encourage you guys to take a closer look through the investor presentation that we featured in today's video. Jason, take us home.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you guys have come out. Appreciate you both making the trip out there to see it in person. As you stated, it is nothing that videos or photos can do justice for. You have to be there and appreciate your individual small scale relative to that whole site and everything that's going out there. I think you guys had a chance to appreciate. There are nearly 500 people out there, Riot employees and third-party contractors included, that are working 24/7, getting this site online and fully operational as quick as can possibly be done. There's truly an army out there working to increase and maximize hash rate operating out there right now. We're very proud of what we've accomplished there. We think this access to power and our proven capabilities of achieving a low cost of power are a huge advantage that Riot has. And very excited to see this site all come together, this first phase at least, excuse me, and you guys will definitely have to come back out and see the full thing when it's all said and done.
Well, we both look forward to it. Jason, thank you so much for your time. Anthony, always a pleasure, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.